All right, welcome all. Thanks for joining us today. Today is the final scheduled FAFP webinar of 2020. We hope this webinar series has been beneficial opportunity. If there are any that you have missed, they are available on the FAFP website. We'd like to thank all of our members and sponsors for your continuing ongoing support. I want to start with just a few housekeeping items. Please keep your video and audio off throughout the duration of today's program. If you have any questions along the way, please enter them in the chat box. At the end of this presentation, we'll have a team of volunteers who will be monitoring the chat box and facilitating your questions. We'll also be recording the program to post on FAFP.net, which has recently been revamped, so please check it out. We have three speakers today, Chris Wiebel, Dr. Nancy Troiano, and Becky Campbell. Chris Wiebel is the Director and Technical Services Director of Technical Services at Rentakil. Chris is responsible for developing and implementing the company's commercial and residential service offerings, including operations and leading to pest control innovation agenda. Dr. Nancy Troiano is a board-certified epidemiologist with Rentakil. She earned her PhD from Virginia Polytechnical Institute and State University at Virginia Tech. She is responsible for leading and supporting the development of pest service specialist training for Rentakil and its sister pest management program companies across the United States. Dr. Troiano has been a featured speaker at Pest World, an annual conference on the National Pest Management Association, and frequently contributes as a pest control expert for national consumer publications such as Prevention, Women's Health, and more. Becky Campbell is a product management veteran that has worked in the food retail and medical industries. Becky Campbell served as product manager, e-services for Rentakil, is responsible for the development of a number of Rentakil's innovative technology-related products. With firsthand knowledge of the challenges faced by today's businesses, Becky leverages her experience to manage and develop future functionality, oversee strategy, and implement user trainings and education to meet the needs of consumers across a wide range of industries. With that, I will hand it off to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Troiano, and today my Rentakil colleagues and I will be presenting the rodent problem, solving for booming populations, unique COVID-19 challenges, and the future. So wait for that to come up. Okay, so you can see this is today's agenda, and we've got a pretty exciting and comprehensive schedule of items to cover. And so we're going to start by talking about the growing concern around rodent populations, rodent basics, and what we're seeing in food processing facilities. Then we'll finish up with some practical tips, which are takeaways for you to implement right now. So with that, let's start by talking about the booming rodent population. Even before COVID-19, rodent populations were on the rise. And there's several reasons for this. The first being warmer winters. So in general, the average winter temperatures have been rising steadily in the United States. In 2019, the average winter, and I'm talking about with winter the months of December through February, the temperature in the contiguous states was 33.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is actually more than a degree above average. This is a trend that has continued over previous years. Now, without really cold winters to create a natural population check, and when I say create a natural population check, I mean one that would, those extreme temperatures actually allow for rodent die-offs and they prohibit reproduction. Without this, more rodents are reproducing for longer periods of time during the year. And a warmer planet is contributing to plentiful pest issues. And rodents are actually just one of those pest issues, but that's the one we're going to stick with today. So you've got that, and then you've got other reasons too. So you've got land development and construction in existing urban areas. And finally, you have COVID-19, which has exacerbated an already growing concern, which is this. Restaurant closures and people staying home have led to a decrease in available food forcing rodents to explore new areas to find food. An increase in empty spaces, whether they're temporary or they're long-term, has created new shelters where rodents can nest and reproduce relatively undisturbed. So wait for that to pop up. Okay, so this is where rodent reproduction comes into play. Rodent reproduction is faster than you think. And this is so super important to keep in mind because rodents are really prolific. So without controls in place, we know that mice and rats reproduce rapidly. Under optimal conditions, a female mouse can produce up to 300 pups in her lifetime. A female rat can live up to 3 years and can produce more than 80 young each year. The graphic that you're looking at here on this screen illustrates how quickly an unchecked rodent issue can get out of hand and pose serious risks to your business. So this increase in rodent populations is more than just a theoretical problem. As the third largest pest management provider in North America and the world's largest pest control provider, Rentakil provides pest control solutions for hundreds of different pests and different types of businesses. So if you look at this graphic, you can see that rodents are a top pest in the food industry. The food industry, for the purposes of this presentation, include food processing, logistics, warehousing, food retail, and restaurants. So think about all of those in a group together. And so let me tell you how we arrived at this chart. So we looked at services that we've performed. We looked at our records between 2017 and 2019 to determine the top pests for each industry. And specifically, we looked at the top 3 pests for each year. And here's how we arrived at those groups. So we took all of the pests in our records and we categorized them into actually 26 different common groups. And so, for example, mice and rats went into a single group labeled rodents. So with that in mind, if you look at this chart, as you can see, rodents were a top pest issue in both 2017 and 2018, and they took second place in 2019, but honestly, only by a very slim margin. So to put it simply, rodents are already a big issue in the food industry. We know this. So what happens if you take a problem that's already a problem and it becomes exacerbated? 2020 might give us this answer. So we're going to look at another data set now for a normal year versus this strange 2020 year. So, okay, so here's some rodent issues by the numbers. While we only have partial year data for 2020 so far, what we're seeing is concerning. COVID-19 seems to have accelerated the rodent problem. With restaurants closed and cities at a standstill and no garbage being created, a major food source for rodents was gone. And so you might have seen all kinds of headlines, especially a few months back, all of these apocalyptic type headlines. So one read, "Starving, angry, and cannibalistic, America's rats are getting desperate amid coronavirus pandemic." And this article basically warned of aggressive rats that were being forced into new areas. And those rats were being forced into new areas because their typical food source wasn't there, all of that restaurant garbage. So our data indicates that the increase in activity is not a media exaggeration at all. So if you look, this month by month data set that you can see here, the Rentakil data shows that rodent activity is on the increase, and substantially so in 2020. So if you look at the dark bars are 2019. So those are the grayish bars, and the red bars represent 2020. In every month, there is an increase in rodent activities reported. So you can see in red the percentage increases are popping up now. So even with some food industry businesses closed in March, April, and May, rodent activity was up. In the warm weather months, we saw double-digit increases in infestations. Some increases in these months could be anticipated as businesses that were closed being reopened, but this is a huge jump in activity. If this trend continues into the most active rodent months of the year, which are right now, so the most active rodent months of the year, October, November, and December, we could be looking at exponential increases in rodent activity. Businesses should be taking action now to avoid problems as the temperatures fall. Okay, so next, we're going to talk a little bit about how these problems can have an impact on your regulatory and third-party audit initiatives. So rodents can be a serious concern for food processors who face regulatory inspections or third-party audits. Under FSMA, or the Food Safety, Food Safety Modernization Act, inspectors have more power than they have had previously. The mere possibility of a rodent problem can be enough for an inspector to take action. And because of rodents' ability to carry and spread disease, a single rodent or even rodent droppings can lead to costly shutdowns and loss of business. Complicating matters is the automation present in many of today's food plants. So let me take you there. Modernization has led to the development of automation in some areas for food plants. So think of automation like electric arms that are putting food into containers, whereas it used to be a human. Now it's automated with electric arm type devices. So if you keep that in mind, you think about those electric type arms in these areas, you could still have spillage that might occur, but now it's going to go unnoticed. And if you can imagine, rodent issues would inevitably follow. So one mouse, just to give you an idea of how prolific they are and what they need, one mouse needs 3 grams or just 1 ounce of food per day to survive. That is a very, very small amount. We're talking about the equivalent of 1 potato chip. So if we use the example of a chip factory with an automated line for filling bags of chips, all it takes is for 1 chip per day to fall off that line. Now, the gestation of a mouse is about 21 days, and 1 pregnant female can give birth to up to a litter of 16 mice. Then those 16 mice can give birth to another 16 mice. Before you know it, you have 250 mice running around. Imagine what would happen if an inspector walked into that party. So under the Food Safety Modernization Act, food and beverage processing facilities are required to have a proactive, risk-based plan in place to prevent pest activity. Third-party audit standards also continue to move in this direction. Prevention is key, and in order to prevent, you need to be able to predict. Good pest control providers will be true partners that understand your facility, your industry, and your risks, and help you make those predictions. They will make recommendations to help you deter rodents from your facility. They can't physically be there 24 hours a day, but with the help of new technology, you can have something standing guard 24/7 and alert to the first signs of trouble. Now I'm going to turn the reins over to Rentakil Product Manager Becky Campbell to talk about what your rodent control program probably looks like right now and how this technology can make your program even more effective. And a little later in the presentation, we'll give you some practical tips that you and your team can begin putting into place today.
Thanks, Nancy. So to do it well, pest control has always been an intensive service. It takes time and it takes expertise. Even the most well-executed programs can be disruptive to your business. So exterior service involves a thorough inspection with a technician visiting every device on the exterior for a complete service, checking for activity, replacing bait, and cleaning the station. Interior service can be even more invasive. A specialist works methodically through your entire facility, and this can be business disruptive. Having an additional person on your property, especially amid COVID restrictions, is a real concern for businesses. It can elevate risk in sensitive areas. And even though all pest management professionals aim to be discreet, in some situations, services can be exposed to public view. Now, routine service is on a scheduled basis. What is yours? Is it weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? Even with that, it leaves a gap where problems can occur unnoticed by anyone. So the number one way issues are escalated between services is by a phone call. That means an employee sees a pest and calls your pest control provider of record to report it. But if you have automated areas, just like Nancy was talking about, you really can't rely on staff to report problems. Once a pest sighting is reported, your service provider will come out to your property. They'll perform a service to investigate, find the problem, and remove it. Then they make an educated guess as to the source of the issue and attempt to rectify it so that the problem does not return. Does this sound familiar? There has to be a better way to ensure effective pest control, right? Well, there is. Today, our entire world is connected. Think about your Amazon or your Google devices or even your Ring doorbell. So this technology makes our lives simpler and improves our ability to respond quickly to everyday needs or potential concerns. Rentakil is now doing this with pest control with our remote digital monitoring technology, Pest Connect. We've equipped rodent control devices with sensors and technology to alert to rodent activity 24/7 and allow for a more rapid response and a more effective pest control program. When combined with your existing integrated pest management program, you can use Pest Connect to monitor high-risk, high-value areas around the clock. This technology integrates with PestNet Online, which is Rentakil's online pest control data management system. What this means is that you get valuable data that'll help you make business decisions. Now you don't just know that you're having a rodent problem in your high value inventory area. You know specifics, such as you're getting rodent incursions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So when you align this information from your Pest Connect devices with your operational data, you can have a very powerful tool. As Nancy indicated previously, for food processors, the ability to prevent activity means that you need to be able to predict where rodents may be active in your facility. So again, the data collected by Pest Connect devices can help you with those predictions. You can see in real time where you may have rodent activity concerns and make adjustments to your program. You can also easily see where you don't have issues. So most importantly, you also have that documentation and controls in place that give you that exact time and date of activity for any of your Pest Connect devices. With PestNet Online, you're also able to produce reporting or documentation that you need with just a few simple clicks. The true power of remote digital monitoring really lies in what it can show you over time. So we know that your facility doesn't stay the same, and neither should your pest control program. With the data that's produced from your digital devices, we can continually analyze your data and recommend changes to your program. So whether you're undergoing a renovation, adding a new product line, or just changing some of your internal processes, Pest Connect devices can be added to help ensure that your high risk or your most important areas are monitored at all times. So even with the best pest control program and the best technology in place, you still need good sanitation, structural upkeep, and storage practices to help keep rodents at bay. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Chris Weibel, who is Rentakil's technical director, and he's going to provide you with some practical tips that you can implement today in your facility. Chris?
All right, thanks, Becky. Yeah, so what can we do right now to help prevent pest issues? In fact, there's a lot of things. Just some small changes in our day-to-day activities can help prevent pests from getting into the facility and simply make the job of the pest control operator that much easier and not having to deal with infestations. So what can we do starting out with the exterior of the structure, the primary area to look at, seal the gaps, cracks, and holes. You always hear the adage that it only takes a small size, the size of a dime, for a mouse to enter a facility. That's definitely accurate and allows insect pests to enter as well. So take steps to seal up all those gaps and cracks. Repair doors, put in door sweeps. This is often one of the most overlooked areas, and it's easy to correct. You know, a small gap under a door is definitely an easy entry point. If you can see light coming through at the bottom of the door, install a door sweep. That can generally be done by your maintenance staff, or if you don't have a maintenance staff, your pest control professional can easily install door sweeps. What about loading docks, loading bays, in delivery of goods? So check out your protocols and see how that's being handled. Are goods being put away immediately upon receipt, or are they left on the dock in the dock area for extended periods of time, and not allowing pests to enter the material and then get put away? Just leaving it out for a couple hours can invite infestation. So be careful to secure that product, upon delivery. If you aren't able to secure it immediately, consider, secure storage in the trailer on the premise before receiving it into the facility. An easy one is closing the bay doors when they're not in use. That's an easy entryway for rodents and a primary entry vehicle for birds getting into a facility. And cleaning the dock levelers. Dock levelers often collect debris and litter and provide an excellent harborage for rodents and other pests. So be sure to clean those dock levelers underneath of them on a regular basis. And then also check your dock levelers for the gaps around the edges. Often those are left unattended and without exclusion material. There's a lot of products available that can be easily installed, either magnetic installation or screwed in, that'll seal the gap on the edges all the way around the dock leveler. So even when the leveler is not in use and the door is closed, that can still be an entry point for rodents and other pests. So look at your docks and consider using exclusion material around those levelers. Rooftops is another key area. Like quarterly basis, get up and check the rooftop, perform those inspections, look at the eaves for signs of entry or damage, and clean leaves and debris from the rooftops. That provides an excellent harborage site for insects. Make sure the drains are cleared and you have good removal of water from the roof, so you don't have the harborage, you don't have the water. Again, a couple key needs for pests to survive and maintain themselves on the roof area. Check your trees and vegetation for overhanging onto the roof. A tree that overhangs the roof is a great vehicle for insects, ants to get on the roof, as well as roof rats. So make sure that no trees are touching or overhanging the roof. Remove standing water. Whenever we have a flat rooftop, oftentimes we have depressions that will allow water to stand, again, providing harborage as well as a water source for unwanted pests. An easy one is installing vent covers. Make sure that vent covers so you don't get pests entering into the facility. And just like on the ground floor, sealing gaps around piping, use it cabling, vents, anywhere electrical utilities enter the building. Make sure that those are sealed up, either with a mesh product or a caulk. Make sure that those are sealed and don't provide that harborage. Insects and other pests want to get into the building. They're looking for harborage sites. So we want to eliminate those entries so they cannot come into the facility. On the outside of the facility, landscaping is a huge opportunity for harborage. So clear vegetation around the perimeter of the building, just like trees overhanging the building, bushes, shrubs around the building provide a nice hiding spot and harborage for pests. And then they're ready to take advantage of those entry points and get into the building. So use a rock versus a mulch, again, reducing the opportunity for insect pests to thrive, and design your landscaping to help, remove water, prevent standing water, just like we did on the rooftop. Similarly, steps we can take now, we talked about the outside of the building. There's a lot of things that we can do on the interior structure as well. So looking at the interior, watch for signs of rodent activity, whether it's in your stored product, just around doors, entryways. Look for droppings, grease marks. Rodents have an oily fur, and whenever they move against walls, entry points, they'll leave a grease mark. That oil on their fur will rub off, and you'll see a dirty, greasy mark along those runways and entryways. So keep an eye out for that. If you see that type of marking, that's grease marks from rodents. Look for gnawing marks, either on walls, wiring, where they're trying to enlarge a hole for egress, and look for nesting materials. Rodents use about anything for nesting, for other materials. So look for signs of nesting. Employee break areas, a key area to look at, primarily for insect pests, but make sure that you have a protocol in employee break areas for storage of food products. Make sure that your employee break areas are separate from production areas, and that employees are maintaining their food items in those break areas. And in locker rooms, a good practice for locker rooms is make sure you have a process, a scheduled clean out protocol, so you're able to get into the locker room, clean things out on a periodic basis, so you don't get any infestations that can go unnoticed. Another key area is trash compactors and waste receptacles. We generate a lot of waste at our facilities, so we want to make sure that waste is promptly put into an enclosed area. Leave trash bags out where they can be easily accessed. Cleaning our dumpsters on a regular basis, making sure that we don't have any leftover debris when that dumpster is emptied, providing, again, harborage as well as food sources. And keep those trash receptacles a distance from the building. So while the trash is building up, waiting for removal, we have a potential, for rodent infestation. So the farther away from the building that we have those materials stored, the better. Another area is our equipment storage. Often this is an overlooked area where our equipment storage can be off-site or in a separate building from the primary production facility, where we keep floor sweepers and other equipment. And often these areas are either overlooked by the pest control operator, not included in their scope, or they're just not as well maintained as the primary building from a structural standpoint, allowing pests to enter the structure, and then they can get into the application equipment and hitchhike into the facility and gain in storage area. This would be a great area for a connected device where you're alerted to activity in that storage area, and make sure you have the same structural practices and protocols in the storage areas that you do in your production facility. So those are some of the best practices around sanitation and structural control. Those are the primary functions for effective pest control. We want to exclude the pests from the facility, and good sanitation helps do that, because pests need harborage, food, and water. So we eliminate their access to those three elements that are necessary. We can keep them out of the facility. Rentakil provides best practice cards on a subscription basis that can be delivered directly to your email that will cover just topics like we talked about today. They cover different areas of the facility with each month. So if you go to the website, you can sign up for those best practice cards. You don't need to be a Rentakil customer to receive those cards. So I'd encourage you to sign up on the email listed, get those best out of that. So sign up is free. So I encourage you to do that. So that covers my portion of the discussion. So I'll turn it back to our moderator.
All right, thank you for your presentation. We have a few questions that we have queued up. One of the questions was that you had mentioned that with the kind of the change in production early during COVID, that there was less food available, but yet you noticed that there was an increase in rodent activity. I would think that less food would mean less reproduction and therefore less mice. So what explains the increase in activity?
So I can take that. So with less food available, you had what's typically a secretive creature and a nocturnal creature coming out into broad daylight, looking in a frantic search for more food. So you see an increased activity because basically where all of these creatures would remain mostly hidden, now they're out and they're frantically searching for food, and they're being driven into more and different areas. So they are a lot more visible, and during broad daylight.
The next question is that with restaurants opening back up, what do you expect to happen with the elevated rodent population and the number of infestations moving forward?
So I can take that one too. I expect the rodent populations to continue to increase. So I expect an increase of rodent pressure now because you're going to have an additional food source. So there are going to be some rodents. Remember, they need very little food to survive. So there are going to be rodents already, present in the areas, and it's not going to take long for them with all of the food now in abundance to start reproducing. In the meantime, the rodents that have spread to different areas looking for food are going to continue to reproduce where they're at. So I expect an overall increase in rodent pressures.
Okay. And kind of along that lines, did you notice a shift in rodent activity based on facilities supplying retail operations versus those that were maybe supplying more food service, because there was a dramatic shift in where people were making their purchases?
Yeah, I think to Nancy's point, whenever businesses, we had the downturn, a lot of businesses closed, we start seeing rodents where we didn't previously see them. So we saw pressure in a lot of accounts that didn't previously have activity, or saw increased signs of activity in those accounts. So, and on our exterior monitoring, we saw more pressures to get into buildings that we traditionally didn't see them trying to get into. And I think we attributed that to lack of readily available food sources, from restaurants, and all the trash that's generated from restaurants. There was a readily available food source, and now the rodents had to work harder to find that food source.
Okay. So if a facility is undergoing renovations, what kind of rodent controls would you be recommending to put in place?
That's a great question. Whenever you're undergoing renovation, your protocols can kind of get out of whack, right? What your standard operating process is changed. You've opened up a lot of new areas that could potentially, be entry points for pests, or you could uncover, hidden pest areas, giving them access to the interior of the building. So during a renovation, that's a time that you need to be extra diligent and review what your pest control protocol is. Typically, we increase our monitoring and our device placements during those renovation activities all around the area of renovation. So increasing the number of exterior rodent bait stations, increasing the number and placement of the interior rodent traps and monitors, and then also implementing additional sanitation protocols with the contractors. So how are the contractors managing their food products and their waste? So while you do have or may have a protocol for employees at the site, now you've got additional people on site that you have to manage and make sure that they are following an established protocol. So you have additional sanitation concerns, and then you have additional entry points and pressure. Another key piece of that is the site is left at the end of the workday to make sure that there's not opportunity for pests to enter on those off hours with that renovation underway.
All right, last question. Are there still audit standards that require placement of devices at prescribed spacings, such as every 50 feet?
So that's a great question. And the answer to that depends on the specific auditing schemes. There are multiple auditing schemes out there. I can tell you, though, in general, many auditing schemes are now shifting from a prescriptive 50 to 100 feet spacing to a more risk-based approach. So spacing is aligned with the pest pressures of that specific facility. And so that is based on a collective pest history, records from that facility. Typically, it's a few years worth of records and a very detailed facility audit. And so that's what we're seeing now is the shift. But in the absence of those kinds of detailed records and recommendations from a pest management provider, then it would default back to standard spacing intervals, which again are auditing schemes specific, but they each have standard spacing intervals. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So again, I'd like to thank the speakers for giving us this great presentation. I'd also like to thank all of our sponsors that have supported this webinar series throughout this summer. Stay tuned for new FAFP educational opportunities. Hopefully we'll be able to meet again for in person for a luncheon, but until then we'll be looking at more of these webinar type activities. And again, please check out the FAFP website, both for the recording for this presentation and for the other webinar recordings as well. So with that, thank you very much.